Science is ultimately to help people. One way is directly through medical interventions, and the other way is by shedding light on basic knowledge, opening new horizons. Watson and Crick discovered the structure of DNA. I saw Crick on television and it caught my imagination. The area I work in is called epigenetics. Our genes determine how our bodies are made and how they work. They're arranged in DNA on chromosomes.
Professor Adrian Bird was born in Wolverhampton, England in 1947. He got a biochemistry degree from Sussex University and his PhD at Edinburgh University.
I heard about a laboratory in Edinburgh where they had isolated genes for the very first time, and I was really hooked. Recombinant DNA techniques and restriction enzymes.
As a postdoc in Zurich, Adrian realized
you could use restriction enzymes to look at an aspect of DNA that hadn't really been studied at all. DNA methylation. There are the two methyl groups, and they're added onto the DNA as part of the way in which genes are regulated by cells themselves. One of the ways one can try to find out how this whole system works is to find proteins that might read this signal.
In 1990, Adrian returned to Edinburgh University to take the Buchanan Chair of Genetics.
Using a series of biochemical tricks, what we found was that there were proteins that bound to our DNA when it was methylated and not when it wasn't methylated. One of those proteins was MECP2. We were trying to understand, how it binds to DNA and maybe represses gene expression. When
in 1999, a professor in Texas,
Huda Zoghbi, found that this disorder, Rett syndrome, caused almost exclusively by mutations in the gene that encode MECP2. Suddenly we had another reason to work on it.
Adrian's lab had already started on a mouse model, growing cells and destroying the MECP2 gene in them, then injecting them into mice.
But if you take away MECP2, then the mice die young.
In males, human males with Rett syndrome also die young. Females can live a normal lifespan.
The conclusion, the MECP2 deficient mouse is a pretty good model for Rett syndrome. So what happens if we were to put the gene back? We made a silent MECP2 gene. We put it into mice that could be switched on by drug treatment. And the mouse was quite ill, it didn't move.
We injected them with tamoxifen, which then turns the MECP2 gene back on, and it was just quite amazing that within a week the mice were running around again.
It's surprised everyone to find that this disorder, in mice at least, is completely reversible. There is every prospect that it would also be reversible in humans.
He's brought the cure for Rett syndrome much closer to fruition than it was.
I think it was very powerful at the time because a lot of neurological disorders were in fact potentially curable just by the forward thinking of Adrian.
A big door has opened, and for that I'm quite optimistic.
We can now edit the genes within the brain, within various tissues in humans. It's very promising technology.
And we're also looking at rather more radical technologies that may allow us to cure. Well, hi, David.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Adrian was one of the first to realise the importance of DNA methylation, applying that understanding to curing diseases. Adrian is a scientist. He's rigorous, he's enthusiastic.
So it's very, very good to be around him.
And he's quite happy that everyone's having fun while they're doing their work.
Does he have a good sense of humour?
Oh yeah, definitely.
He's a family man, he's a well-rounded human being.
I've always liked watching birds. I've always had to suffer the consequences because of my name. Photographed birds, I photographed insects. Oregano, it's beautiful.
Why do you like cooking?
It's basically an experiment and you get to eat it afterwards. So I adore pasta. I like fairly classical music, mainly Beethoven, I would say. This is my dad.
Kenneth Bird was a journalist who wrote 13 children's books about a talking Irish dog that's a kidnapped target.
Because I was interested in drawing and cartooning, and I got to illustrate them.
Adrian and wife Kathy met at a scientific forum.
1988, 89, something like that.
Yeah.
Was it love at first sight? Or?
No. Oh, actually, no, I saw you giving a talk before that in 1987,
Yes.
but you didn't know I was there.
No. Admired from afar.
The couple married in 1993. Kathy is a genetics professor.
Yes, we discuss science quite a lot, but we have different interests outside science because Adrian likes watching sport. I like sewing and knitting and reading.
The couple has 4 children.
We get together over meals and we talk a lot, and then we kind of diverge and do our separate things.
It was more the holidays. We would spend a lot of time together. Dad would read us a bedtime story book, and he'd always do funny voices for each character.
Tom majors in physics.
Entirely possible I've been subconsciously influenced to study that through what they were able to teach me about how inspiring science can be.
I want to be an actress.
I'm very proud of the different interests and talents that they both have.
You're much better at the practical support than I am.
I think us 3 have a bad memory because it comes from Dad, but Mum's the only...
Mum does all the remembering.
At 69, will he retire soon?
I sniff the air intellectually. If I sense that my ability to do new stuff, think new thoughts, and motivate people to work is disappearing, then I would stop. Hasn't happened yet.
Dr. Huda Sogby, professor at Baylor College of Medicine and director of the Jan and Dan Duncan Neurological Research Institute, both in Houston, Texas. She won the Shaw Prize for identifying the connection between MECP2 and Rett syndrome.
My dream, of course, was to help the patients in the sense that you can diagnose it much earlier. If you discover somebody has Rett at 1 year of age and you enroll them in special, therapeutic interventions, you will have a better outcome than if you don't make that diagnosis till they're 7 or 8 years old.
Huda earned her medical degree at Meharry Medical School in Nashville, Tennessee in 1979. In the 1980s, she did her residency in pediatrics and clinical neurology, as well as her postdoc at Baylor. She initially planned to become a pediatric neurologist.
I then met Ashley, a child with Rett syndrome, which at the time we did not really know about this syndrome.
Ashley was 5. She's now 36.
Ashley looks really good.
She was normal until her 18th month, when symptoms started appearing. The hand-wringing, the seizures from age 4, then scoliosis and back surgery at 11, and breathing problems. She lost her ability to walk, talk, and learn.
Eating is extremely a challenge for these girls. They grind their teeth all the time, so any good meal may take anywhere between 1 to 2 hours. Imagine spending 6 hours a day feeding. Some of the girls go through a screaming stage and nobody really understands why.
A week after meeting Ashley, Huda encountered another girl with the same symptoms. She later found more cases at Texas Children's Hospital.
Many of them were misdiagnosed as autism because early on they lose communication. All girls, this must be a genetic disorder. And that's how I inspired to go into research.
Rett syndrome strikes 1 in 10,000, so cases are rare. It's often fatal for boys. 99% of female cases strike a family only once. Huda focused on 4 families that had 2 girls each with Rett syndrome.
The fact they were all girls still convinced me at least that it is maybe on the X chromosome.
Boys have an X and a Y sex chromosome. Girls have 2 X chromosomes. Huda looked for the Rett syndrome gene in the regions on the X chromosome the girls from the 4 families shared and inherited from their mothers. Genes from regions not shared were eliminated. Huda narrowed the search down to the tip of the X chromosome. That region had around 200 genes. It took 16 years to sift through those genes.
It was a very painstaking search. Back then, the genome was not precisely mapped. Almost every gene to exclude would take several months. Imagine doing this year after year after year and finding no difference. People are starting to doubt if this is a genetic disorder. You're getting skeptics from the funders, the scientific community telling you you're wasting your time.
In 1999, Huda's lab finally found the mutant gene. The gene makes a protein, MACP2, crucial for neurons to help us talk, learn, and move, as well as other functions. Neurons increase as the brain matures. A mutation in the gene reduces the protein's level in brain cells and disrupts neurons from doing their job. Huda's discovery helped doctors diagnose earlier and treat Rett syndrome.
She has probably the best instincts I've seen in any scientist. She goes after it with everything she has.
Studying a rare genetic disease where most individuals may not have even heard about would have been considered a decision for career suicide, so to speak. Advantage of hindsight, that actually was a great decision on her.
Professor Arthur Baudet is Huda's mentor.
People like myself interact with maybe 100 postdocs and students in the course of your time in training. And from the first moment until today, Huda's always achieved at incredibly high levels. I've had a lot of satisfying events in terms of recognition over time, but she's outshined the mentor.
I grew up in Beirut. During my first year medical school, the civil war broke out. The war intensified, and my parents insisted that I leave with my 2 younger siblings and come to the States just for the summer. I had a sister here, and I tried to go back, but the war escalated. I ended up in Nashville, Tennessee, and continued on with medical school there.
She met her husband, William, a cardiologist, in med school in Beirut. William later followed Huda to Tennessee, where he studied as well. They settled in Texas and have 2 children.
It's amazing, actually, to be with her because although she's very renowned, as a wife and companion would be, and maybe even better, because it didn't get to her head. When we're at home, we're at home. She strikes an amazing balance.
My mom has done an incredible job balancing career and family. There were many nights where she did have to work after dinner or on the weekends, but she never missed anything that was really critical for me. She was there for all those important moments.
There's no cure yet for Rett syndrome, but studies are being done to treat symptoms. In deep brain stimulation with mice, fine electrodes are put on parts of the brain responsible for memory and learning.
We try to test their spatial orientation. We put them in a big tub of milky water, and we hide where the platform is. We train them using spatial clues, and the Rett mice learn much, much better after the deep brain stimulation.
It'll take years before the therapy is tried on girls with Rett syndrome, but Huda's in for the long haul.
The question I'm most frequently asked is what made me persist all those years. First and foremost, the girls. I've seen so many of them, I really felt I have to figure out what this is about to help the girls.